Welcome to Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets, where world-renowned author, speaker, and holistic veterinarian Dr. Judy Morgan answers your questions and offers healthy options for raising your pets in a more holistic manner. Not sure which vaccinations should be given or how often? Not sure what to use for flea, tick, and heartworm prevention? Join Dr. Judy now as she interviews the top experts and showcases the latest products that will help your pets stay naturally healthy.
Hello and welcome to Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets. I'm Dr. Judy. You can hear my show every Monday and Tuesday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern by going to dreamvision7radio.com. All of our shows are then archived and are available for your listening pleasure at any time. Today, I'm really excited to have someone from the pet food industry that really gets it. And there aren't very many people in the pet food industry that I say really get it. If you listen to my shows, follow my Facebook Live, you know darn well that I am very concerned about the quality of the food that is being fed to our pets. I'm really concerned about the toxins that are being put into pet foods and put into our pets' bodies. It's very important that we know how to choose good diets and how to formulate diets and how to use the best diet for your individual pet. So along the years, I have met a lot of people in the pet food industry. Some I've liked, some I haven't liked. But my guest today is someone that I adore and has a great story of how he broke into the pet food world. And he happens to work for one of my absolute favorite companies. So my guest today is Billy Hoekman. And he is the Natural Science Coordinator for Answers Pet Food. So most of you know him as Billy from Answers. And I've heard Billy speak at many conferences and seminars. And it's interesting because we see each other a lot because we seem to be tracking in the same circle of friends. Billy has published 8 articles in Dogs Naturally magazine. We both work quite commonly with Dogs Naturally because they're kind of on the same page that we are, treating our pets more naturally in order to give them better health. Billy, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
So I learned the story of how you started working for Answers when we were at the AFCO meeting together out in Seattle a couple of summers ago. So can you please tell my listeners how you got involved in this, because nobody else does it this way.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because now I get some very passionate people who say, I kind of want to do what you do. How did you get to where you got? And I'm kind of like, I don't really know how to give you a blueprint because it's a very unique situation. So essentially, I have a dog named Lua, and she was my first dog ever, so I never had a dog growing up. I was actually very scared of dogs. I didn't know anything about dogs. And
Lua is the cutest pug, right, in the world. I mean, she is adorable.
I think she's the cutest dog in the world, but I'm very biased in that. And so I got Lua, and at 8 weeks, she was a puppy, and I said, how do I feed this dog? So I went to a pet store, and the very first introduction I got to pet food was, I said, okay, this food has science in the title, so this is definitely what I should be feeding. And then the very first advice I ever got in the pet food industry was the pet store employee said, no, meat needs to be the first ingredient. So I was like, okay, that is the qualifier for a good food, right? And so picked my food and went on my way. Now, my brain works very specifically. My wife will tell you I only talk about like 4 things. And so if I love something, I want to know everything about that thing. And for whatever reason, the question of what do I feed my dog never became uninteresting to me. So at this point, I wasn't working in the pet food industry, wasn't or anything like that. So years go by, and I'm doing virtually, what would be considered the same stepping stones that most people are doing. So,
now, I need to ask a question. Yeah. What was your training, and what were you employed doing during all of this?
Oh, so interestingly, when I was growing up, my parents owned restaurants. So they own 2 restaurants. They don't currently own those anymore, but they had 2 restaurants, and so I just fell into that world of like restaurant management. So I was totally doing a different thing. Actually, the last thing I did outside of the pet food industry was I was a general manager of a Starbucks.
Okay.
So yeah, very strange, right? And
well,
I don't
it's food
miss
related
it whatsoever. So I mean, I still love coffee, but and so essentially, I was the person who would go to Barnes & Noble and not buy any of the books, but have them all spread out, all the books I could read on animal nutrition, and was the person who was constantly researching online and just trying to find the right information. And so fast forward a few years later, and I'm living in Seattle, Washington, and I actually at that point had my own in-home dog sitting business. I was doing other things. And I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this know, and they might be this actually, you might be a resource for your friends and family and for their friends and family in terms of dog nutrition, right? Once you start to know something, people kind of ask you advice. So I became sort of a regional person in the Seattle area that people would reach out to and ask dog and cat nutrition questions. And so at that point, I'm making all of my own food because I just don't trust anyone in the pet food industry at that point. And so I'm diligently making all my own food, all the while still researching day in and day out. And I said, I need to do this for a living. This is what my passion is. This is my calling. So at that point, enter Answers Pet Food. I didn't know when I sent this email that they had only been a company about 6 months, right?
Wow.
And that they had just come onto the market. I thought, this is a pet food company, so it's a large pet food company. I didn't know it was just one family. Didn't know anything about that, but I did find them, and I said, okay, this is great. I can actually use this product because I respect what they're doing from a transparency perspective, from a nutrition perspective. Everything about this is good. So I started using the product, and then about 6 months later, my boss, Jacqueline, she didn't know who I was, didn't know who she was, but her email was on the website. And so I just wrote her a very long email about myself, and I said, I love science, and this is who I am, and this is what I want to do with my life. And at the very end, I wrote, and you have to hire me because I can't work for anyone else. And she did. So that's, I wasn't always the science coordinator for the company. I kind of, worked my way up to that. But, they took a chance on me, and it's been a very great mutual relationship in terms of, us trusting each other. And I feel very fortunate every day to do what I do. So.
Now, is it true that at the beginning you worked for dog food?
I did. For 2 years, I worked for dog food and had to kind of keep my other jobs thing going. And it's funny because, I have a pug, so it doesn't take that much to feed my dog.
You weren't getting paid very much because that's not a lot of food.
Well, no, I had all this extra food. It was the funny thing. And the funny thing about that is, too, to this day, I use, when you're involved, obviously, in the formulation of products, you're using those products on a daily basis. But I also add other things. So even then, I wasn't even feeding 100% Answers because I like variety and I like to, and plus, for me, feeding my dog outside of what I do for a living, feeding my dog is my hobby. And so I just love that formulation aspect of it. But so definitely did that. And it was very interesting, too, because I was at dinner last night with my bosses, and we were talking about my favorite email of all time, which was when they hired me for actual money, which was great. At the time, they were like, we can't pay you that much, but we can pay you this. And I wrote them an email directly after that, and I said, I know you can only pay me this much, but please don't let that diminish my responsibility. right? I still want to do this, and I still want to work this many hours, and I still want to do this. And they said they looked at each other and they're like, is he like a real person? So,
yeah, you are kind of a rare commodity, I will say, for sure.
It's been a journey.
I need more employees like you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'll work for very little and I'll work extra hours. Okay.
Yeah, well, and now I definitely, appreciate being paid more than that. But
yes.
the really cool thing about Answers and how we all came together was that Jacqueline and Roxanne, who have been on your show and who are my bosses, they came together with the science of feeding animals and this holistic side of things. They actually came to that apart from each other. Before the company started, they were obviously sisters and they saw each other at family events and stuff, but they weren't as close as they are now. And so they
live on opposite sides of the country, right?
Exactly, yeah, Oregon and Pennsylvania. And so they came to that science independently of each other because when you follow the evidence, that's where you end up. And I was the exact same thing. At the exact same time, I was also coming to those same conclusions. So it's really cool because like Answers Pet Food didn't train me. I mean, we all learned from each other, but what happened is we all came to the same conclusion and just kind of fortuitously ended up together. And it's become this really great sort of like working relationship. So.
Well, we could say it's coincidence, but there are no coincidences in life. That's the way it was meant to be, and it's just so cool. And I have to say, sitting down to a meal, Jacqueline and Roxanne they've been very generous with me and my husband. And anytime we're all in the same area, we go out to dinner together, and the conversations around the table are always incredibly interesting. And the thing that I like about these guys is, they talk the talk, but they also walk the walk. I mean, when you go to dinner with you guys, we're eating the food, the same food that goes into the dog food, because everything is such high quality, and it's real food. It's not throwaways, and it's not stuff that is has low nutritional quality. So it's a very different way of looking at things. So
absolutely.
So how did they kind of get together and get this whole thing started? So they got you on board. They're starting to make pet food, and you all live in like very varied locations. I mean, it's not like you're all sitting in one place getting this food made. How does that work?
Yeah. Well, and it can't ever be understated. I think that a lot of the eyes on the company are on me, and that's because, Jack and Roxanne said, we want you to be the face of the company, and which I'm happy to do. But it's also a lot of times just on me, Jacqueline, and Roxanne. But it can't be understated that there's several other family members who play an absolutely vital role to not only the formation of the company, but also the day-to-day operations of the company. Jacqueline's son, Derek, is our CFO. And the guy who handles the money is the most important guy when it comes to, your success as a company. So he's kind of, we're all beholden to him a little bit. And, Jacqueline's husband, Keith, is the president of our company. And he is absolutely brilliant in dealing with the legal aspect as well as dealing with, he was the person who's mainly behind getting our plant set up, our new production plant that we just opened. And then even now we have Kaylee and Carly, who are Jacqueline's daughter-in-law, work for the company. And also Paige does our emails, and that's Jacqueline's niece. And Roxanne's daughter, Julia, now does our phone. And so if we didn't have one of those people, and that includes like Irvin, our main goat farmer, Irvin and Norman. If we didn't have any of those people, I don't know if we'd be a company. And that's kind of the cool thing about it, is we all are very inherently valuable to the company.
Absolutely. And it's so cool that it really, talk about family values. And I mean, this whole family is so committed to this. And and they're so committed